Isolated tribes are an incredible part of our world, and although we may not understand their ways of lives, it is so imperative that we respect it. Let's dive right into the top 10 most isolated tribes in the world that don't want to be found. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Ayoreo. The Ayoreo people are the indigenous people of the Gran Chaco, and they live in both Bolivia as well as Paraguay. There are approximately 5,600 Ayoreo peoples, and while many of them ended up becoming sedentarized by missionaries in the 20th century, there are around 100 people who have still maintained the traditional nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle and remain uncontacted. The Ayoreo were first contacted by Jesuits in the 1720s to try and convert people to Catholicism, and in the 1740s the mission was abandoned and the Ayoreo people were luckily left alone until the 1900s. The Chaco War between Bolivia and Paraguay brought in 100,000 troops to the territory, as well as all of the diseases that they carried. Both countries saw the Ayoreo as a problem, and from the 1940s to the 1970s there was a rule where a Paraguayan soldier could be freed from service by killing an Ayoreo. At this time, young Ayoreo people were also being stolen, and one was even put on display in an exhibit. In the 1940s and 50s, the work of missionaries continued, and in the late 50s, missionaries used force and manipulation to remove the Ayoreo from their land to various mission stations, and the land where they once lived was sold for cattle farming. These mission stations forced the Ayoreo people living in them to give up their culture, including their religion, appearance, music, and diet, and missionaries sometimes convinced the Ayoreo living at the missions to find other uncontacted Ayoreo in the forest to sedentarize and convert, and in December of 1986 that unsurprisingly turned out to be a horrible idea that led to 5 deaths. The Ayoreo people who are in contact now are struggling with both poverty as well as discrimination, and the uncontacted Ayoreo have 6 main threats, which are cattle farming and deforestation, sale and allocation of their territory, searches for oil, missionaries seeking contact, illegal collection of territory resources, and violation of territory by various groups. I could dive into each one of these points and discuss why they are such a threat to these people, but I'll leave that for your homework because we've got to keep this list moving right along. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Tagaeri. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. The Tagaeri are an eastern Huaorani people living in the Ecuadorian Amazon basin. The group was once a part of the Huaorani families, but they separated off in 1968 after refusing missionary settlement, and since then have lived in isolation. Their name comes from one of their members' tag. There haven't been many interactions since then with other Huaorani, but the interactions that have happened are often met with violence. It is estimated that there are around 20 to 30 surviving Tagaeri, and they are one of the 2 remaining indigenous groups living in voluntary isolation in Ecuador. These people are semi-nomadic and live off hunting and gathering as well as a few crops. Since 2007, there has been a national policy to try and help protect them that includes untouchability, self-determination, equality, and no contact. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Yanomami. The Yanomami people have been living in the rainforest stretching from southern Venezuela to northern Brazil for thousands and thousands of years. They are much larger than many of the other tribes that we've talked about, with around 35,000 people. There are Yanomami people who are in minimal contact, although they still maintain their traditions and way of life. They live in communal houses that can hold up to 400 people, and they strongly believe in equality with no chiefs or leaders, but instead teachers and shamans. Because of the contact they have had, however, there have been outbreaks of diseases such as malaria, tuberculosis, and influenza. These are fatal to their communities as they of course have no immunity built up. Some of these outbreaks first occurred in the 1970s, and the tribe is still struggling to contain them. In 7 years, more than 20% of the tribe passed away from this, combined with the conflict over the land that they live on. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Awa. The Awa are a group of people living in the eastern Amazon rainforest. There are around 350 living members, but not all of them remain uncontacted. Out of the 350, it is believed that around 100 members continue to try and remain uncontacted, although it unfortunately hasn't been as easy as it should be for them. The Awa were once settled people, but they began to live a more nomadic lifestyle around the 1800s in order to try and escape incursions by the Europeans. They were further threatened by settlers who cleared out most of the forests on their land. In 1982, the Brazilian government received a loan of $900 million from the World Bank and the European Union, but under a condition that the lands of certain indigenous peoples, including the Awa, would be protected. This should have been the key to helping protect these peoples, considering their lives were continually being threatened. There were many cases of tribes people being killed by settlers, and the forest on which they depended was being destroyed by logging and land clearance for farming. Unfortunately, it took the government over 20 years to actually act on this condition, and finally in March of 2003, the Awa's land was finally distinguished. And to make matters a little worse for these people, there are always people who won't respect their land, no matter what laws are in place. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Taromenane. Remember a couple of points ago how the Tagaeri, how I mentioned that they were one of the last 2 uncontacted tribes in Ecuador? Well, this is the last one. These people live on the Yasuni National Park in the Ecuadorian Amazon basin, and this tribe also has some distinct relations to the Huaorani people. There is estimated to be around 150 to 30 people in this tribe who maintain their nomadic lifestyle in the rainforest. While, like everyone else on this list, 2 of their main threats are oil development and illegal loggers, these guys have another, more unexpected threat, and that is the Huaorani. In 2013, more than 20 of this tribe were killed by other Huaorani, which left 2 child survivors who were taken as hostages. Apparently, the people who took part in this terrible tragedy bragged about it on national television at first, calling themselves braves for attacking and taking the lives of unarmed people with rifles, pistols, and long spears, and even went as far as selling photos of it to the highest bidder. There is so much to cover in regards to this one incident that I unfortunately just don't have time for, but the whole situation is extremely tragic and just downright horrible. Much of these disputes stem from the land that they share because of the fact that this tribe has been pushed deeper into the forest from the Huaorani, allowing oil companies to drill on the land. It is of course a very complicated issue that has so much more to it. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Toromona. The Toromona are a group of people who are indigenous to Bolivia, and they live near the upper Madidi River, which is a part of the Amazon basin, and the Heath River in the northwestern area of Bolivia. There hasn't been any notable contact with this tribe aside from other indigenous tribes, but this tribe was talked about a lot when a Norwegian biologist searched specifically for the tribe for many years before he mysteriously disappeared in the region of the Madidi Park in 1997. This tribe has remained quite isolated, and the most recent known sighting in the 21st century was when the Ayoreo people of Bolivia informed an anthropologist named Michael Brohan that they had contacted a group that was in voluntary isolation on the eastern bank of the Manarini River. It wasn't confirmed that this was the Toromona tribe, but it is believed that that's who they saw. Thankfully, in 2006, Bolivia's administrative resolution created an exclusive, reserved, and untouchable portion of the Madidi National Park in order to protect the Toromona and their desires to be uncontacted. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Karafawyana. The Karafawyana are an extremely small group of only about 50 people who remain extremely uncontacted. Because of this, there is very little information available about them. They are located within the Amazon regions of Brazil, so like many of the other tribes that live in the area, they are threatened by illegal logging, oil companies, and destruction of their land. It is believed that they practice a religion that is based on other living creatures and things around them, such as plants and animals, but the specifics of this remain very much a mystery. They are a nomadic group of hunter-gatherers, and it is unclear if they partake in any kinds of agriculture or horticulture. While it would be of course super interesting and great to know more about this tribe and the people, it is kind of refreshing to hear about a tribe we know so little about because they mostly have just been left alone. Of course, that doesn't mean the outside world has been great to them, but just maybe less worse. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Sapanawa. The Sapanawa are a group living in the uncontacted frontier, which is the area of land that straddles the borders of Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil, and is the home to more uncontacted tribes than anywhere else on Earth. A group of Sapanawa people recently made contact in 2014 because of the fact that their homes were attacked and burnt to the ground by outsiders. So many of their people passed away in this brutal attack that they were unable to bury them all. This all stems from the lack of punishment that has been given to illegal loggers and drug smugglers in the region, as well as all the missionaries in the area who are careless when it comes to spreading the diseases that we may have built up an immunity to, but the same cannot be said for these uncontacted tribes. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Moxateteu. These people are one of the last remaining uncontacted tribes that are a part of the Yanomami people. They have all the similar traditions and values, and the Yanomami people who are in contact have reported seeing them before. They also explained that they are living in the area of the forest with the highest concentration of illegal miners, which poses many threats to their way of life. Not only are these miners bringing the potentially fatal diseases that we've discussed, but there of course will also be major and deadly conflict if the tribe comes in contact with the miners. The mining not only harms the land they live on, but the miners use high-powered hoses and mercury to extract the gold, which then pollutes the rivers and the forest. Most of the mining is illegal in the first place, and near gold mining sites, the plants and animals surrounding them have been found to have extremely high levels of mercury contamination. With these plants and animals being the only source of food for this tribe, this mining is also increasing their chance of severe health problems due to the contamination. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Sentinelese. The Sentinelese are the tribe who inhabit North Sentinel Island in the Bay of Bengal in the northeastern Indian Ocean. They have actively resisted any contact from the outside world and are known to kill anyone who tries to trespass on their land. In 1956, the government of India declared the island a tribal reserve and prohibited any travel within 3 nautical miles of the island, which truthfully is for the best. It is unclear how many people are in the tribe, but it is estimated to be between 15 to 500 people, with somewhere around 50 to 200 being the most likely. The Sentinelese are hunter-gatherers, and they use bow and arrows to hunt wildlife and as well to catch local seafood. As of right now, it isn't believed that they take part in agriculture, but it is tough to say as we of course cannot really get a look inside their ways of life. The first peaceful contact was made with the Sentinelese in 1991, but visits to the island stopped in 1997, and that is probably the right thing. While it would be amazing to know more about this tribe and their ways of life, the feeling clearly isn't mutual, so the right thing would be to just let them live their lives the way they want. Alright guys, that has been our list. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski. I'll see you again soon. Bye!